evening. Nancy's keeping time. I'm set up to share slides. So if you want to watch the queue run the speaker queue, that would be great.
Perfect.
So I literally am in the same chair.
Thank you. I'm sorry. The kids, my son's at the 6.
But now we know why my
Yeah.
laptop
So
is
I
not
just
charged.
ran around.
It's because of that power bar.
Because they don't do anything for the older kids in the childcare.
I came back,
Well, that's
you
nice.
know.
You could keep tabs on the notes as well.
What is great? I'll get set
I
up.
don't know, it's candy, it's got, you know, high fructose sugar in it. And all the good.
Should we get started? We need to get
Yeah.
more volunteers. All right, we're gonna get started.
Yeah, he had a taxi pad in his ear.
So whoever's talking is going to volunteer for take notes. Oh, that was great. So
I like that. Credit.
it was you. You were the you're the next one to speak. Thank you for volunteering, Hannes. So we've got AJ has volunteered to take notes and Hannes. Okay. Okay, seriously, can we get one more note taker? AJ graciously volunteered. We need one more. And we all,
Nice is written in there.
Hannes, you're already volunteered. Okay,
Well,
thank you.
It's a live document, so I encourage everybody to help keep us honest.
Yeah, everybody can help, really. And also just someone to monitor the chat in case there's somebody that can't get to the microphone. If you can like be their microphone person. Any volunteers for that?
I'll be there.
Okay, thanks, Michael. So just note, well, boilerplate, everybody's probably seen this, but in case you haven't, these are the rules for participating in IETF events. Please be familiar with your obligations as a contributor. There's also a code of conduct in participating in IETF meetings. Please extend respect and courtesy to your colleagues at all times. Make your comments impersonal. And remember that we're here for the common good of the internet and for everybody that uses it. So keep that perspective in mind when making comments. And please, we encourage everyone to contribute. All right, so moving on, we got our note takers. So here's Agenda Bash. This is what we have queued up for today. We have, I think, 5 minutes of open mic time, but typically we tend to run over. So there has been some requests for some additional agenda topics that we asked those people to present their topics in a interim. So we're actually planning an interim meeting because we didn't have time for all of the talks that were requested this time around. And we haven't discussed when we'll have that interim meeting. If we have time at the end, we can start that discussion maybe. So with that, I think we're ready to go to the first presentation.
Are you going to share the slides for Dave?
Yeah. Do you want me to share the slides for you, Dave?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks, Ed. You guys can hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. I was planning on being there in person up until a little over a week ago. I got COVID, and so I switched my registration to remote. You're welcome.
Well, hopefully you're feeling okay.
I am feeling fine today. I got other family members that are still down with it, but feeling much better.
Oh.
All right. Thank you. I'm Dave Thaler. This is joint work with Hank and Thomas Vasati, talking about draft 02. Next slide. All right, so just some history here. At 118, we first adopted this one as a working group document, and so that's when it was posted as draft 00 as a working group document, formerly individual submission. In June of this year, we posted draft 01, which the main item that needed a bunch of work was the section formerly called endorsing identity. That one had a bunch of discussion work by Lawrence, Thomas, and Hank, and with text suggestions, and I got a slide on this later on. Also, after 01 was posted, then Ned did a review and filed 5 issues. Thanks much to Ted, that was great. And so in July, we posted 03 that addressed a lot, but not all of Ned's feedback, and we'll talk about those today. And our goal is to get ready for working group last call. So next slide, please. All right, so I'm going to walk through the 5 issues. The first one, you can see the number at the top is the GitHub issue tracker number, and the title after that is the subject of the issue that Ned filed. All right, so basically the first one, Ned had a comment that it wasn't clear in the diagram that there was 2 places that said hardware claim set, and it wasn't clear that those were different sets of claims, right? That it wasn't just the same one in 2 places. And so the first thing we did was we noticed that claim set was 2 words in 9334, which is the RATS architecture. By the way, the approved EAT spec that's in the RFC editor queue uses claims with an S space set, whereas 9334 used claim without the S set. And so this one was arbitrarily different with no space, and so we at least made it match the RFC, but we had to pick one of those 2, and we picked to match the RFC rather than the one that's not yet an RFC, in the hopes that maybe all 3 will change by the time they're RFCs. And so to address the comment, the text that's in bold is one of the 2 things that was changed. Just makes it clear. It says 1 set of claims, claim set 1, and an additional set of claims, claim set 2, to go along with the figure that Ned was talking about. Next slide, please. In the figure, it had, this is the one that was confusing, and so we added the 1 and the 2 there to go along that text. It says these are 2 different sets of claims on the left and on the right. And so that text explains that both of those are different claim sets about the same target environment. So that was the resolution to that part, which was confusing, and hopefully this clarifies things. And so I'm going to keep going in the interest of time unless there's questions or I see somebody at the mic. So next slide. Next one is about the comparison rules. And so Ned observed that the reference value provider, that's RVP, reference value provider, has insight on how best a verifier should apply matching rules, right? So along with your reference values can come things like these are intended for exact matching, or by the way, here's a range or whatever, and that comes from the reference value provider. And so we observed that that was true for the reference value provider, but the same thing could be true from, say, an endorser or even an attester. And so we made it be more general here to say, so the text, that's the paragraph there is brand new with the bold as the main points. In some implementations, hints or suggestions for how to do a comparison might be supplied by a reference value provider as part of reference values, an endorser, and or an attester, but the verifier owner is authoritative for appraisal policy for evidence, and the relying party owner is authoritative for appraisal policy for attestation results, as depicted in section 3 of 9334, right? So 9334 already says that, but of course, this is going down into a level more detail. And so RVPs or any of these other ones can provide hints or suggestions, where IVP being the most obvious one, by just explaining that those are hints or suggestions. So the verifier owner could override those if there was a need to, but it certainly makes sense for those hints and suggestions. They are pretty typical. So that was what we added for that one. Next slide. All right, so this one could be read either of 2 ways, and the authors had intended for it to be read one way, and Ned read it the other way, and we looked at it and says, you're right, that is ambiguous, okay? And so the text below is the old and the new one combined there, where if you read it the wrong way, then you read it as follows. We currently assume that reference value providers and endorsers typically provide the same information. Well, that is not true and not what we ever intended to say. And so what we meant to say, we currently assume that reference value providers typically provide the same information with potentially large number of clients. Okay, and so it's the same across the receivers, not same between the senders, right, was the intent, right? And so we removed "and endorsers" there to make it clear what same means, as same to a potentially large number of clients. And then we added the green text at the end that says, we also assume the same is true as endorsers, right? Endorsers also provide the same information to a large number of receivers, typically, but of course different from what reference value providers provide. Okay, so clarifying what the right way to mean would say same was. And so we believe this is far less ambiguous because we agree it was confusing before. So, all right, next slide. Now I get to ones that's an actual technical point. Okay, so this is an actual technical change. The other ones are maybe editorial clarifications or make it mean what we kind of meant instead of what it seemed to say. This one is actually a technical point. Okay, and so what it used to say is that endorsers should not use conditionally endorsed values based on immutable values. Okay, so this is a section about conditional endorsements or conditionally endorsed claims. And so this one said you could do it based on where it was the if part is on a mutable value, but not based on an immutable value, like a serial number. And Ned pushed back on that, and we scratched our heads and said, well, we can't even remember where that came from, and we agree. And so we changed this, okay? And so it no longer bans use of conditions based on immutable values or anything else for that matter. And indeed, the example that Ned provided, we added that into the example. So the previous paragraph ended with an example about a condition based on mutable values, and so we kept that one. But then we also added the example based on a condition based on immutable values that we got from Ned's. And so now it reads: an endorser for a given CPU might provide additional state, or an endorser might provide an additional information that if the serial number is in a given range, then a specific security guarantee is present. So thank you, Ned, for the suggested example. We took that. So that is the main technical change in the document. This is still only part of the issue there. So if anybody else has a reason why this was there in the first place, we're interested, but only if you disagree, because we removed it to just make it be more general. So, all right, next. Okay, second part of this comment was Ned observed that there was text that was kind of vague. It said, well, talking about how state matches reference values, and it leaves a lot of imagination of the reader to figure out how this works. Okay. True. And so we added two new paragraphs, one at the beginning and one after an intermediate paragraph. That's the ... there. So both of these paragraphs are new, but they're not adjacent. Okay. So the first one says, and by the way, what's published there contains some grammar issues. And so I'm showing you the copy that is in GitHub right now that would be in draft 03 once it gets published. It says the example in figure 1 showed evidence containing actual state for layers 1 through n, and an endorsement containing actual state for layer 0, right? This is in the earlier section before we even introduced the concept of conditionality. Right? However, some claims and endorsements might be conditional, and so are only treated as actual state if a condition is met. Okay? And now we explain how the matching algorithm works, at least conceptually, right? You can implement it however you want, but here's the conceptual algorithm. It says, thus, actual state is determined by starting with a collection of unconditional claims and adding any conditional claims whose conditions are met based on the actual state. This process is then repeated until no more conditional claims are added. Okay, so it's kind of the conceptual algorithm that iterates through to say what conditional claims apply. So you keep adding them, and so one might be conditional based on another one, based on another one, and so on. So you keep doing this until you don't add any, and then you're done.
Hey, Dave, I'm going to give you a 2-minute time check, meaning you have 2 minutes left.
I should have a 15-minute slot, so I should have 7 minutes left.
Okay, you're down to 6 minutes.
All right, then next slide. Okay, I won't use 6 minutes. I've only got 3 or 4 slides here, so we're good. Section 4, readability. This one has a number of different things that Ned called out as editorial issues, and so I'm going to highlight 3 of them in different slides. The first one is about the title of the section. Okay, draft 00 called it endorsing identity. Some people didn't like that, and so draft 01 had endorsing evidence provenance. Ned found that even more confusing, right? The heading is not an intuitive concept, so you even have to explain that. And so what the GitHub version has, meaning the one that is going to go into 03, unless I get feedback otherwise, is endorsing verification keys. Okay, and so you'll see in the other comments here, all this stuff is about the same section. And so that's the heading of this, is endorsing verification keys. And I think Ned has already seen all of these, right? And all these were Ned's feedback. But if anybody else in the working group has feedback, feel free. So next slide. Okay. So this one, I'm going to summarize or quote Ned here, that what it should really say is that we think evidence should be authenticated. That could be stated more plainly. And Ned said maybe a different approach would be to explain that attesting environments, that's the AEs, attesting environments have attestation keys that authenticate evidence, and that provenance of attestation keys is needed to build trust in the attestation environments. Okay. And so then Thomas prepared some text to address that and incorporate basically Ned's suggestions there. And so again, here's the text that is there in the GitHub version, ready for 03 now, unless there's feedback otherwise. Attesting environments have cryptographic keys that allow authenticating the evidence that they produce, right? You'll see that's basically taking Ned's suggestion directly. And then a little bit farther down, endorsing the linkage between such verification keys and their associating attesting environments is crucial to the verification process. Okay? And there's a bunch of other text in there, but this is the new text, if you will, that helps to just state much more plainly that evidence is authenticated and what that actually means. And it really means about the verification keys, hence the title of the section now. And then part 3 of this one, next slide. This is the last one with actual content here. Ned commented on the sentence that said, evidence typically contains an identifier for the attester. And the word typically is in there. And he said, well, you know, there's things like the DAA, the anonymous attestation. And so maybe we shouldn't say what's typical. And so we said, fine. Evidence can contain an identifier for the attester, and now we just don't say what's typical or what's most of the time or anything like that. Sometimes it can and sometimes it won't. So, and then there was another phrase that was maybe ambiguous or confusing, admittedly, which used to say, no particular algorithm or cryptographic protocol is assumed for the verification. And Ned said, well, you know, both the attester and the verifier both have to have the same protocol and algorithm. So you kind of have to assume one that this is the one that the other one has, right? And that wasn't the intent. The original intent was this document doesn't assume anything. Of course, implementations will. And so what instead we did was we changed the sentence. And now it says specific protocol documents are also responsible for documenting what particular algorithm or cryptographic protocol is used for the verification. The word also is in there because there's also a sentence elsewhere, not too far from here, which says what specific protocol documents are responsible for documenting. And so this one just adds another bullet to, if you're going to write a document that says, here's a protocol, then here's another bullet that you're going to cover if you're supporting endorsements. So there you go. Those are the summary of all the changes, both in 02 and what's currently pending in 03. And so that will take me to the last slide. Which is the goal is anything else that somebody brings up here, we'll try to address, and then we'll submit draft 03. If there's no feedback, then we'll go ahead and submit 03 right now, where our hope is that the working group chairs can then start a working group last call on 03. And so that's the end of my slides, and I'm happy to take questions and comments now.
I don't see anybody getting up.
Okay, then again, thank you to Ned, and then I will give you, Nancy, 2 minutes.
Appreciate it. One question, Dave, when do you think you'll submit 03?
If there is no feedback today.
Okay, who's read version 2? Can I have a show of hands? Except for the authors. Authors don't count.
Ned did.
Well, I'm asking the room if anybody has reviewed version 2.
I would like to. So I have a promise for one.
Well, it's the question of working group last call. Okay, I mean, we can do multiple last calls, so maybe this will precipitate more feedback. So just let us know, and we'll start.
Okay.
Working group last call. Okay, thanks, Dave.
All right, thank you.
Next, Corin.
Cuckoo. Hello.
Thomas?
Can you hear me and see me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Cool.
Quorum. I don't see anything coming up. I'll go there.
Are you trying to share? or
I'm
is he-
trying to share. Are
It
you
looks
sharing,
like it's
Thomas?
about to be.
No,
I
I'm
tried
not.
sharing. Do you want, are you trying to share? Because it's not, nothing's coming up.
No. Ask to share screen is bad. I stop video, maybe.
It's frozen.
Oh, joy. More tools. Okay, so this is the quorum. For quorum. Oh,
I'm going to have to restart.
so Thomas, can you share the deck?
Not sure. I have it attended.
And this is why we.
There's
either-
something on the screen now.
Oh, the quorum slides are up. Who's sharing?
I am sharing.
Okay. Okay, Thomas.
Yeah.
I think we're ready. Go.
I don't see anything popping up.
So we see it on the screen.
We see it on the screen.
I know, but remote attendees can actually do not.
Right.
Maybe I'm not joined.
How can I-
Should I rejoin or something?
Exit. Leave room.
Somebody on the queue? Mohammed, are you on the queue?
Yes, I was.
Okay, let me remove you from the queue.
To resolve the issue, so my question there was, why is it not possible to have that endorsement draft, which is now currently a separate draft? Why is it not possible to have it in the 9334 as an enhancement of that?
An
It's
enhancement of.
essentially a part of RAT's architecture, right? So you are explaining what endorsements are, and that's missing in the RAT's architecture. So my question is, why not extend the RAT's architecture to include that within that, rather than having a separate draft, which is going to a working group last call and so on. So I would like to have.
Okay, so I can meet with you afterwards, and it sounds like this is just understanding the IETF document structures. It's a published RFC, so it's too hard to edit it now. We would have to do a biz, and then it would be a much bigger thing. It's much easier to just add a new document. And I'm happy to meet with you after.
Okay, sure.
Thomas, can you see the slides now?
No, I see nothing. I see a new deck is being shared and that's it. I will try and rejoin.
Yeah, I tried rejoining. Yeah.
It's not you.
Don't leave.
It's
No?
not you. Mirako, if you're listening, can you poke this room?
Thanks. Thanks, Richard. Sorry, I'm wearing the wrong, I couldn't see the wrong glasses.
So in the meanwhile, I did go to the mic, but you can't see it yet. The architecture draft is an informational RFC as well. And I think the endorsement RFC will be,
Informational.
it's also going to be informational, but yeah, it's hard to read.
You can't present either.
But by the way, should we flag it as an update for 9334?
I think it will take longer.
No. You should. Like,
Oh, flag it, okay, sorry.
Um,
because
couple of us just mentioned anybody that leaves and rejoins the room does see the slides.
Okay, so I will rejoin.
Okay, as a chair, I can't do anything on Meet Echo. Okay, come on. Those in person, do not leave the room, okay? Hank,
Hank's on the
sit
queue.
down.
He's on the queue.
Oh, he's on the queue. I cannot see the queue. Okay, I'm gonna leave my.
I can see that now. Yeah.
You see it now?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, next, please.
Oh, this is Hank replying to the update thing, and that sounds like a good idea.
Cool.
Making the RETS endorsement document that will become a Wi-Fi Plus call soon, and update to RFC 9334 sounds like a good idea.
Right, I agree. So,
The
okay,
note
Corey.
takers can note that, please. That would be great. I'm
Corim. So we published IETF 05 just in time for the cutoff, 8th of July. In terms of health check, since 04, we have opened 20 new issues, closed 18. We have merged 21 PRs, and we are still working on 4 PRs. As we speak, we go through our usual weekly cadence of public calls to work on issues and PRs, and we have recently started an experiment to add an extra hour to the chore meeting to discuss in a more sort of free-flow fashion quorum-related topics. On a slight tangent, but maybe relevant here, I recently made an educational presentation about quorum at the Confidential Containers Weekly because they are considering using quorum for the RVP interfaces of their verifier. So maybe that if you want to get a quick overview of the whole quorum machinery, at least the basic facts and how they interact, that could come in handy, and I can share the link later on the mailing list if you're interested. Next, please. So lots of work in this iteration, still in progress. We added more introductory material. So Hannes and John and others had lamented on the mailing list the lack of sort of smooth progression in the presentation of the topics. Basically, and I agree with them, and we all agree with them, that the document was delving deep into the details too soon without providing much context. So we have now added a section 2 titled Verifier Reconciliation that describes the sort of high-level operation expected by the quorum verifier. This takes Ned's theory of operation that he presented at IETF 119 and basically made it into prose. Yeah, so that's this. Next, please. Okay, so we sort of reworked the quorum appraisal procedure description, which is now section 8. So we provide description of the internal representation of the relevant conceptual messages that are part of the appraisal. We have provided an improved definition of the ACS, the accepted claim set, which is the core internal data structure that is used by the quorum verifier to track appraisal state across the various stages of the verification. And in fact, we also described in more details the various appraisal phases, especially those in scopes that are phase 1, input validation and transformation, where you decide which quorum tags to use. You validate your crypto, the crypto around your evidence. Phase 2, evidence augmentation, where the ACS is initialized with actual state provided by verified evidence. Phase 3, reference values corroboration, where you do the reference state matching. And then phase 4, endorsed values augmentation, where more actual state is added based on successfully matching of conditional endorsements. Yeah, we have documented other phases that are sort of out of scope of quorum, but still in the verifier scope. So verifier augmentation, policy augmentation, and attestation results production. But this may or may not stay in the document. The core things are the 4 phases that I described before. Next, please. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. So we also worked on refining the comparison rules for environments and measurements. And another big thing that we did in this iteration is some sort of surgery to remove any DICE slash SPDM specific evidence mapping consideration. These are going to be published separately in a document that Andy and Ned are currently working on. I don't know whether that is already published, but I know there's a GitHub repo with that content already, where they will be specifying evidence transformation methods for DICE and SPDM formats to the quorum internal representation. Next, please. So next steps, authority delegation, issue 244, basically defining how authority over different environments in a complex system can be delegated from one supply chain actor to another. We have some further endorsed value triples harmonization. Yogesh has already worked on merging CET and MEC in PR 219, but we have outstanding things that we might want to work on and that are tracked in a couple of issues. Diona has made a huge renaming across the document, substituting measurements with properties, a couple of PRs there. I think they are still outstanding. And then we're going to work, of course, on core processing and semantic consolidation, targeting a 06 in time for Dublin. And that's it, I think. That's our update.
You have a couple people on the queue, Thomas?
Yeah,
Mohammed?
please.
Yeah, Sama to you, Tristan. So I would like to talk about the first slide. So if you go back on the first slide, so there are some meetings happening in the Quorum group, and it's a working group adopted document. And I don't like that I don't get any update on the working or the mailing list that what is happening in these calls. I had raised this issue multiple times also to the AD, and I would like to know what the issue is and why is it not being done transparently, because it's not an individual draft. This is working group adopted document. So I have some concern over there, and I would like to know what is the issue there. Why is it not being done transparently?
Well, it's public, so it's transparent in a way, right?
So the meetings are not, I never had any update on the mailing list about what the meeting agenda was, what was discussed in the meeting. The results are never brought back to the mailing list.
So the meetings are short meetings in the sense that we go through the backlog of issues and we triage them. We do PR massaging. That's the kind of work that we do there. So except in the last month, we have added an extra hour to the back of that to do this sort of more big topic discussion. But that's free flow. There's no agenda there, effectively.
But there are some topics which are discussed which are not brought to the mailing list. So the specific one that I'm talking about was not presented in the last meeting about the horn clauses stuff. And I was specifically interested in that. And we never had any update on that, on what was happening. I then had to contact Diona offline separately about knowing what is going on in these meetings. So I just want to know, that's not something which was presented in the meeting. So, and that was never brought up in any of the issues, that specific issue.
Okay, so if I can make a suggestion here as chairs, for the current authors and editors for this draft, it doesn't hurt for you to publish again as a reminder when these calls are being held. That's number one. Number two, it would help also if you can publish again the GitHub location. So Mohammed, all of these issues should be tracked in the GitHub, which you can, it's public, so you could access them and view it that way as well.
Yeah, but the
if he asks
meeting
on
minutes
list,
are something that could be also included. That's my point. I mean, whatever
If you're
was
asking
discussed
on the
there, that's
list,
not
I
an
mean-
issue. So issue is something that you have an issue and then something was found and then you put an issue for that. So the thing I'm talking about is what was discussed in the meeting that should be brought back to the mailing list or something, or You have some process for that. So that's what I'm talking
That's a
about,
fair
not the
point.
issues.
If the issue was raised, it should come back to the mail list and reported on the outcome.
I
That's a
never
fair
saw any issue brought back to the mailing list about the meetings.
Okay, could we rectify that, authors?
I have an opinion about this. There's an IETF process option to define a venue where a document is discussed. The venue is defined in the internet draft. When you look at the top of the internet draft, it gives you the exact point of the GitHub official IETF working group that is the venue chosen to discuss the document. Every process that is happening in any meeting talking about content of the draft is reflected by updates and notification on that GitHub repository. So you can always see like a flurry of GitHub notifications when that meeting happens. So, and everything is super transparent. Every comment is decided, is there, and every output and input is there. If you would like to participate, I would just advise to join the venue. Which
Okay,
is
just
either-
FYI,
yeah.
Deb is the last on the queue. I can't figure out how to close the queue.
Okay, can I just add one quick comment? So the issue that I'm talking about is never on any GitHub issue. So that's what I'm talking about. It's already on the mailing list.
What we're asking is for the authors to just provide more reports on the mail list. Okay, Mike. Mike, you're on the queue.
Unmute yourself, Mike.
Go ahead, we can hear you.
No, we can't hear.
Oh. We can't hear you, Mike.
Mic drop.
Okay, Yogesh.
Yeah, basically, I recollect what happened. So I recollect Usama raising the same concern in the last ITF, and because he was explicitly interested in attending the meetings, I just checked the calendar for invites, and he's already included in that. So he is welcome to join the meetings and participate in the discussion. That's what I
Okay.
had to say.
The queue's closed, guys. Deb,
Do you want, Mike, are you ready? Can Mike talk?
Mike, you want to try again?
Is he frozen?
No, he's trying to talk.
He's not talking.
Yeah, he's trying.
His lips are not moving.
Okay. So my suggestion is remail out the invitation in case somebody deleted the invitation and they don't have it anymore. That's my suggestion.
All right, thanks, Deb. Okay, we're a little bit over, so let's move on to the next.
Does this work?
Oh,
Oh, Mike.
quick, Mike. I jinxed it. We can't hear you again, Mike. If you can put the question on the chat, we can follow up.
What is going on?
Mr. Ounsworth, we cannot hear you.
He left.
All right, we need to move on. Interactive models, interaction models. What's next?
Is it interaction models?
Yes.
Hank,
Mr. Burkholz.
you're up.
Mr. Burkholz.
Oh, it's me?
Yes.
I'm so sorry. I'm just exhausted. Hi there, I'm Henk. I'm very sorry that I'm not wearing my badge. I lost it somewhere. I think I will find it again. Is it lost and found? I'm here to update the working group on the reference interaction models. It has been simmering for ages. Next slide, please. And there weren't as much comments on it as there was the last iteration. So I think major one was that it was once upon a time as a test, a little bit focused on hardware security models, especially TPMs. And the world has evolved a little bit. TPMs are flavors now. The TPM specification is the relevant part here. There can be equivalent hardware in bigger silicon. It's common GPU features today in basically every computer device you have. So the specification kind of implied you must have a dedicated TPM. That is confusing and misleading. We changed that. I think that is a fine thing to do. And we didn't hear any objections. If you have any objections, file them. But I think that's okay. So next slide, please. We had review from Hannes. Thank you. Hannes brought up 3 items and was like, why are you just making up new words, like new funny words like a handle, not use nonce and epoch ID and specific items over all the interaction models you describe. So the point is that nonces and epoch IDs serve certain similar purposes, and we introduced an umbrella term that's called a handle. We introduced that term now better, highlighting why we are doing that so that the interaction models become comparable. So when you're switching, for example, from a standard challenge response model to a subscription model, that you know, okay, I can't use an exact nonce anymore because obviously not just use once, but it kind of serves the same purpose, either giving you some idea of recentness that you can derive freshness from, that can give you directly freshness, and it sometimes is a replay attack protection. So that's useful, I think, and I hope we accomplished that. So Hannes approved the changes and assumed that therefore, from his point of view, accepted. We also highlighted that there's an instantiation specification of the epoch IDs, which is the epoch markers, and the reference to that work also evolves and might be even done before this document here. Then there was this assumption, it was originally always an optional thing that for example, in the challenge response model, the challenger, which typically is for evidence conveyance, the verifier, knows what kind of evidence or claims in evidence exist or are available by the attester. That is obviously not always the case. The default fallback is you just get some evidence with some claims in it. We thought that the optionality of claim selection was good enough, but obviously for the common reader it was not. So we elaborated on that optionality in the fallback behavior. Then there was a good discussion about, because we have this key attestation, a term floating around in IETF right now, and we were going with these very old terms like authentication secret ID, and nobody could correlate these 2 terms, so we just switched to attestation key ID. Everybody's like, oh yeah, so when you do a key attestation, it's probably about the attestation key, right? So that makes a lot of sense. So that is just a relabeling that happened all over the document, even in the flow diagrams. The concise acronym of it was changed, and everything should be consistent now. And yeah, so we have improved the wording about knowing that attestation key. So the spoiler here is sometimes you actually don't even know that. So when you request evidence, you might not know who gives it to you. That's a thing. I'm not entirely sure how useful that is, not knowing the identity of the attesting environment that reports highly critical evidence maybe to you, but there might be scenarios where this is not possible, so the verifier might not know attestation keys at all. And so, yeah, okay, we just spelled that out. Yeah, that is, again, these things are all obvious to us, but we are only seeing the trees, see people looking from above, seeing the woods, are like, why is the spot missing? So this is what I think the content changes we made to address, I think, developments in the current IETF ID world. And next slide, please. Which leaves us with request for review, which can be twofold. As a contributor, my ask to the working group and the chairs is, should we request some directorate reviews? Should we do a tentative working group last call and therefore solicited some more eyes on this? Because this is a relatively old ID now. and has grown in complexity and needs some re-review. The last review wave we did is like 2.5 years ago. That's a little bit long. So, so I think we should kick that off, because this is now a very often cited, but for most people already boring document, because people know what's in there. But in order to push it over there may be some triggering SEC ID or something.
So we can do an early SEC review.
Exactly.
And
That's
we,
relatively
I mean,
early.
we can do a working group last call here.
Yeah. Thank you. Exactly. Well, that's basically it. So, yeah, it has grown in complexity over time. I wished it would just be 3 models and everything is okay. But then there are sub thingies with brokers and without brokers, and there are some flavors of it. And then interaction models suddenly are 9. Well, there we are. But it's defined there, and it's really useful for implementers to choose something that is not a standard challenge response interaction, because somehow there is a bias in the community that you do remote attestation with the challenger from the verifier, with the challenge from the verifier, which is, I think, only a very specific subset of how remote attestation works today. And that's basically it. Thank you for the review things. And are there any other questions?
Has anybody reviewed this document? Can I get some volunteers to review? Michael, Thomas, I can't see.
It's Michael, Geary,
Monty, yeah,
Monty,
sorry.
and
Michael.
John.
Monty, Geary, Michael, and Kathleen.
And John. You're not, that's also
And I can as well review.
And
it.
Yogesh.
And you good.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Can those get captured in a minute, please?
John,
Kathleen.
Michael,
Right, can I ask my question?
MCR, next to you.
Yeah, Gary Mundy of MediaTek. So one thing I wanted to know about when I review this, and Osama this morning led a very nice session on the attested TOS document that he and Thomas and several others are actually pushing forward in the IETF. I think that there is a missing link between 9334 and what is actually required to make attested TLS work. Can we review this document with that in mind? Like, I'll give a simple example. You define something called streaming remote attestation. I can think of ways to relate that to attestation in a TLS session continuity context as an example, but I don't know if that was really the intention behind your document, to apply it to attestation as a kind of protocol binding, an existing protocol binding.
So speaking now, taking on the point of ATLS, I think it's super useful to say this is based on the streaming remote attestation because we're using this and this and this, but we are also adding this and we are not using that option. And then you can basically place yourself in the ecosystem. If that is possible, if possible for you from the ATLS point of view, that is great. If you can't do that, that's excellent feedback. Maybe we have to tweak it a little bit so you are able to do exactly that, because this relationship will place you in the ecosystem, and someone else making some similar decision will realize, oh, I don't have to do this anymore. I can use ATLS. And that would be the benefit of the document at its core.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, we need to move on.
Sure.
Don't leave. Don't leave. You're up. It's the UCCS draft.
Oh, this is Carsten.
Oh, I had you.
Hank requested it.
Oh.
Yeah, so I'm waiting for the deck to come up. This seems to be very slow. So I'm going to present the most boring document of this meeting. So the CBOR tag for unprotected CWT claim sets, or UCCS. Next slide, please. So just to remind you what we have as a background, we have something called CWT, or COT for short, which is essentially JOT in CBOR. And technically, this is just the COSI armor around CWT claims set. So the green thing is a CWT claim set, and we can put a COSI envelope around that, tag it with tag 61, and then we have a CWT. So this is the construct that we have been using for a lot of things. Now, the interesting thing is that the green stuff sometimes has a life on its own. Before it's designed, it may be passed around in some protocols, for instance, on a secure channel, and you want to be able to talk about that as well. So at some point we decided we need a CBORD tag for that, and we're looking for tag 601 for your information, but that hasn't been allocated yet, and we wanted to register this tag. Next slide. Now, this is essentially already specified in RFC 8392, which defines the COT, the CWT. So we could just register the tag and refer to RFC 8392, and we would be done. But we have been reminded that using an equivalent or something that might be mistaken for an equivalent to a CWT without protection might confuse people. So we decided to write up security considerations so you know in which environments it's actually useful to do this. And also, it turns out that there are some RADS concepts UCCS relates to, and it just makes sense to write some text about UCCS is being used in RADS. So that motivated having a document. Next slide. And while we were writing this document, we always ran into this little problem that 8392 doesn't have CDDL. And if you want to talk about something, then you want to have some CDL with that. So we decided to just write up the CDDL for the CCS. CWT predated the CDDL specification, so maybe that's okay. We don't have to do something about COSI because the CDL for COSI already was in 8152 and is in 9052 as well. Anyway, so we have some more juicy stuff in there that just simplifies or facilitates the use of this unprotected CWT claim set. It turns out that CCS and JCS can be described using very similar CDDL, and that has brought people to think we were going to do a grand unification between the two, and that's not the job of this document, and I'm not even sure whether I would recommend doing that. This document just gives you CDDL, and it's just easy to do it in a way that applies to both. Next slide. So we now have a -10 that has received a lot of editorial feedback, and we think it's ready for working plus core.
Hi, this is Deb Cooley. So I think if you look at the data tracker, this has actually already been submitted to the IESG. It's an AD review, looking for an ID update.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
So I believe what's happened is Roman's probably given you comments and that you need to address the comments and resubmit
Yes,
the
we did
ID and
that.
give it back to him. So I don't think you need a working group last call. You need to actually just answer the comments he's already given you.
Okay.
Correct?
Yes, thank you, Deb.
Thomas, you're in the queue.
Hello. Just one, sort of tangential thing. So the media types. So we have now a resolution regarding the definition of UJCS that Karsten has kindly provided. Thank you, Karsten, again. So we think that as soon as UCCS is released, then media type can be unblocked as well. Reminding everyone that media types is sitting there waiting for UCS to progress. So we think that So as Deb said, if UCCS is now in the hands of the AD, then we think eTempty can also be progressed in the same way, at the same pace.
Wow, I haven't been to the mic in this working, anyway. So I'm holding media types until UCCS is done and until something else is done. I can't remember what it is.
No,
Probably Hank's though.
no, it's the only one. UCCS is the only one that is holding them.
Now, there's also a draft that's in the editor's queue that still needs to be updated because of comments that were made after it was already in the editor's queue, and I'd like that done too.
Yes.
Hi, this is Hank at the mic, speaking as a author. Our collective author's memory obviously is hazy. We replied to Roman's comments with pull request 29, and there was no pushback. So I think we already did do that. I just checked the email list.
Maybe publish a new version.
Yeah, it's that.
Yeah, I think this is just a data tracker bug that the action holder for this document may not be set up correctly. So let's find out how this fell between the cracks. So that message was sent on July 4th, which maybe is not a great day to send a message to an American.
What's that, Deb?
Yes.
Yes.
So it was copied to the Reds mailing list.
Thomas, you're in the queue.
Sorry, another clarifying question to Deb. Is the draft that you were talking about, the EAT draft itself, which came back to the working group and then has been sent back to the ISG and is now back in the RFC editor queue?
No, the draft that's in the RFC editor's queue that I'm still looking for an ID update on is the Chara draft. That's how
We
I
don't have absolutely no dependency on Chara though, so I'm confused.
No, there's no. So Chara, I mean, I don't know. You want to talk about this now? Or you want to talk about this later? The Chara draft had a comment made on it that affected the Yang module. Somebody made updates to the draft because it was thought better to do the updates on the draft before it was published and rather than filing a errata after it was published. But they also made other changes, and some of the changes weren't correct. So I went back and said, hey, what are these other changes? And are you sure these are correct? So the editor has asked for that ID to be updated so that we can have a clean draft to put through the editor's queue. I'm not standing here with my laptop, so I can't get you the dates of those messages. But you have them.
It's on Chara. Hi, this is Hank at the mic. We, I think, reversed the one thing that was a change, a breaking change, where we called nonce and nonce value to be symmetric with every other statement. That is technically a normative change, so reverse that. I think that was the comment, and it is submitted as a compliant and now working ID that could be in off. Yeah. Yes. Relatively. Yes.
Yeah. But Hank, what is the relationship with EAT media types?
There's none.
Oh, okay.
This is totally independent. This does not this is not blocked in. No.
I'm holding media types because of UCCS.
Yeah.
Only that. Okay. Yes.
Chara is just.
It's another thing. Okay.
Side
Sure.
I think we pivoted to a different topic, Thomas.
We did, Thomas. Thomas, I'm holding media
Sorry.
types because of UCCS.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you.
Can we move on? Okay. All right, so next up is Hank.
Epoch markers.
Hi, this is Hank again. Yeah, we were talking about the reference interaction model and how their epoch IDs and their epoch ID have a manifestation in a concise CBOR-based format and called epoch markers. Next slide, please. So just a small recap. I'm not entirely sure how familiar you are still with this. Epoch ID is illustrated in RFC 9334. It's basically the start of a new age of freshness. That is a specified period, a so-called freshness epoch. And whenever you receive a new epoch marker, a new period of freshness start, age of freshness. And these ages are rang in by the epoch bell, which is the service emitting epoch markers. Every epoch period is called an epoch tick. And so you can use this like nonces. We had this discussion before in the reference interaction model. You can use them for recentness. They can use them for freshness proofs. And you could say it's mostly a multi-party nonce because multiple RATS roles in one RATS system receive the same epoch marker, understanding that this is the current age of freshness. So if you get evidence from a previous epoch marker, it's immediate stale. That is a highly scalable system for housing center and thousands of closely located things, typically clouds and such, but also other scenarios where you have highly critical infrastructure and you have data diodes where you can only send data in and that literally no data comes out, then you can push a epoch marker in. So there is a lot of interesting usage scenarios for epoch markers. It scales well, it's cheap, and also allows you to only have one very expensive clock. If everybody is working with time here, you know how expensive, precise, or good, accurate, or even useful time is. So there are examples here. An epoch marker can have several contents. You can literally put something like a nonce into the content, and it's probably working in similar to a nonce. You can put an old school, and we had this in COSI RFC 3161, timestamp token in there. You can have a modern half migrated to CBOR one there, or you could just use a relatively modern, I want to say, COSI signed CBOR time tag, which is RFC 2B9581. There are other things like what's like a list of one-time passwords. So it would be like a nonce list, so to speak, and you can use them up. And an epoch marker gives you a new one over time. So suddenly when you get a new list, the old list is outdated, like the old school banking. So there are a lot of ways how to add content to the epoch marker. It's an open-ended list, actually. You can specify in your own internet drafts new contents, like Bloom filters, for example. There are a lot of things you can do there. But I think it's 4 or 5 methods that are already in the ID cover like 80% of the world's use cases. So next slide, please. So why am I here? Because we want to have a adoption call. The document basically from the point of the authors now is done, but somehow we didn't come to an adoption process. We were asking at some point the authors decided to ask COSI themselves, and COSI has no desire to do it. And now our question is, could we adopt?
We can do an adoption call, confirm it on the mail list.
Yeah, just like that. That would be super awesome.
So you want to do a poll?
Yeah.
How many people have actually read this draft? So Ned's going to start a poll at one point.
Yeah, we had this poll twice already, by the way.
Well, we
so
did.
yeah, so the poll, who read this draft, this is the 3rd time we are doing this poll, by the way. We could look back at the minutes of years.
I would still like to run the poll.
Sure.
So that if we have enough people, which we do, then I can ask the next question, which is, do you support adoption for this draft? How many do we have? We only have 3.
3 yeses so far.
Yeah, Meet Echo is acting up today. I don't know. Sometimes you have to refresh.
It's been freezing up.
Yeah, it's been freezing at me too. So it's not a local thing. It's a Meet Echo thing.
We're still getting no's.
We still have a lot of no's. Okay, I'll just put on the mail list the adoption call.
Yeah.
I was trying to expedite, but okay.
Thanks.
So we'll do the call for adoption.
That's basically it. Was just talking about what it was, and
Thank you. All right, Kathleen.
So it's this one. Go from Hank to Kathleen. All right, so this draft was previously called attestation sets per Hank's request. Title was changed on a mid-cycle review to remote posture assessment for systems, containers, and applications at scale. And a few co-authors were added, AJ Stein, who's online, and Monty, who's in the room. And one more is added for the next version. And next slide, please. Okay, so to give you an overview of this, this looks a little bit like the slides Dave had presented a while back. This is the same slide I presented, I think, in IETF 112. So this is a draft I've had alive for a very long time, about 4 years. Now, for the endorsements draft, you have the assessment of something, right? For this, and that's informational, because you might do it in different ways, and that's understood with this. What we're trying to accomplish here is have a universal way to send a small summary report of whatever you're trying to assess. So how many are familiar with DISA-STIGs and CIS benchmarks that give you like a set of policies that you measure your software against? It could be operating systems, could be applications, and there's hundreds of them. So these are existing industry standard documents. So the purpose here is to have a standard way to communicate the result of an assessment that happens locally, because that assessment might be quite verbose, and you're not going to send the whole thing over if you're going to do this at runtime, because it's just too expensive if you have, 100,000 nodes on a network and they're running multiple applications and you want to do frequent assessments. You don't want to send the whole bulk thing over. So what we'd like to do with the working group, which is why the draft isn't finished, it's the idea is that we'd like consensus, and we'd like to make sure the use cases for this broad set of things are covered in what we'd like to exchange online to have consistent reporting. Does that make sense? So we just want to send to like a CSPM, if you think about, or a GRC, a governance risk compliance system, or a cloud security posture management system, is going to receive like a summary report says, this is good, this is not good. If it's not good, the system might do something locally and send an update. It's good now, or some pieces might happen. A lot is out of scope. So this is going back to the separation that we've done in the IETF for drafts for a long time, where you just define the thing that you need for interoperability, and everything else that might be different is out of scope, right? So like remediation, that was one of the comments Hank provided on the list. How is remediation going to be done? This draft doesn't worry about it. It's only setting up the interoperability for, I checked for this specific benchmark at this level. So does it meet a high level of security for Ubuntu, or for Apache, or something else? And that result is sent in a way that it's expected, with a tie back to the logs on the system for transparency. TPM is represented in the system, or in the draft right now, and that's one of the reasons that Monty said that he would help. So one of the upcoming versions will have other methods besides TPM included, so that it's a broader scope, because there are multiple ways you might assess locally and then report. So we want to be able to represent how that was done, so people can say, oh, okay, I trust this, I don't trust this, or how they categorize it in their systems. Does that make sense? Yes, I'm getting some nods. Yeah, I'd rather make sure we have an understanding of this.
Just a scoping question. So I don't see in the list at the bottom where you have the platforms, the trusted execution environment, and just a clarification question whether it is out of scope for this work.
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
So trusted execution environments. So you mentioned the containers. So can they be confidential containers, or is your scope only limited to these kind of devices which include TPM but not trusted execution environments?
It could include that.
Okay.
But if you might not, if let's say you're running your whole workload in a TEE with the expectation that that is providing your full protection on your workload, that it can't be tampered with, that is more expensive potentially, right, to run fully in a TEE. And so this would be a less expensive in terms of operations option to show that it hasn't been tampered with.
Okay, then I will suggest adding that in the document because I don't see trusted execution environments being mentioned.
That was one of the things Monty planned to add.
Ah, okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
And even specific ones, because there are some specific, not everybody uses the open standards. So if there's a way to represent it, we'll make sure we get consensus from the working group in terms of what we need to represent. So your feedback would be greatly appreciated. All right, I'll move on then if there's no other questions.
Yaron is on the queue.
Okay, great.
And then actually at the top of the diagram, what if I'm running in a cloud? I have no idea what the blue parts are. I don't know. I don't care about the actual hardware. I know about the cloud. And then I have Kubernetes. And then I have a complex container image on top. Is that a use case that you care about?
Well, so you would decide, do I want to run this assessment or not? You could run the assessment and then use or not use the reporting, right? So you might send it, let's say you're a SaaS provider, you might send it within the SaaS provider environment to your management system, or you might even send that as a check to the customer of that instance, right? So I think that would be configurable. Where does it go? Or does it go anywhere? Because maybe you don't care. Maybe your posture assessment stays local and then you don't use the reporting feature, right? Because you might do your remediation without doing the reporting, but I think most would. So when I say that you might not send it, I'm coming from a perspective where I supported state, local, tribal, and territorial organizations for 3 years, and they have 0 resources. So they might be very happy to know everything's good on the system and they don't have a CSPM, right? They're going to trust whatever management system is doing the attestation right there. They might only have a few instances to manage, so they don't need to send it to a CSPM. They might look within a different system managing the containers, and that attestation piece would happen and be reported locally without needing to send, right? So that's why I think it should be optional, but whatever you send needs to be consistent so that whoever sends it, it is parsed and interpreted as expected, right? So that's the only piece I care about.
Okay, thank you.
I'm just going to do a quick time check. You're only on slide 2.
There's only 3 slides. The other, that's okay.
Okay, you've got like 5 minutes left.
Yeah.
I can wait.
Okay.
No, I think it's
I'm
good.
just giving her a
Give the-
time check, so
Just,
go
no, I'm
ahead.
fine. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Hi, Justin Richards. So my question was along the lines of what I believe I understood Yaron's to be, is that the assessments that are being described by these entries, are they focusing on the entire stack there? Just the yellow, just the blue? Do I get a choice? Like what's the target for the kinds of things you're trying to describe with these?
So I think it should be done in layers, right?
Okay.
Because the benchmarks are typically for one thing, right?
Okay.
For an application, for an operating system. And the draft, I think, even says you might do the, let's say there's measurements that are taken and there are configuration settings that are taken. Implementers of this advised that you might do those separately and then the result would be combined against the benchmark, right? Because the benchmark's a text document that says all the things you check. Some might be measurements, some might be configuration. You might split those out so you'd have multiple assessments that feed into the report.
Okay.
for one thing.
Yeah, okay. So in that case, perhaps I was missing it in the document, but I didn't see a way to convey multiple results within a single data structure. But we can look
Yeah.
deeper at that.
Yes, that'd be great. Thank you. Good feedback.
Hi, this is Daniel Small, Cable Labs. So I think in one of the previous questions, it kind of came out that we were discussing sort of where to in terms of where all of this stuff goes to. But I was just wondering if you might be able to remark a bit on kind of establishing the where from, right? So yeah, that's more or less what you're asking. Yeah. So do you have any ideas on this that?
Yeah, so from the testing that we've done, our thought process was from the container management system
Okay.
with some open source. So I'm hoping to get that work done.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, next slide, please. I think it's just an overview of, yeah, so I think this is all the stuff that I said. It would be an EAT, so a JOT or a COT, and then some conveyance protocol that could be agreed upon, you know, what makes sense, or even that can be completely abstracted. It doesn't have to be anything mandated. Right now, I think it's just a suggestion. Next slide. The next slide just has the changes since the last version. And we have a couple of comments that came to the list, so we'll make those changes. And would like additional, we can take in the feedback that was offered today and make those updates. We are seeking adoption so that we get further review and advancement of this.
Okay, so when did you post this last version, Kathleen?
The last version was posted before the due date.
Okay, so I don't think it'd be fair to ask who's read the draft.
Well, it was more than 2 weeks ago, Nancy.
Oh, I can ask. Okay. Oh, Hank, you popped in it. Okay. I think given all the challenges we're having with Meet Echo, I could just ask on the mail list. I could do a show of hands here, and then I was going to do a poll, but people are like suffering with laptops.
You could try hands and try a poll.
Okay,
See what happens.
let's run a poll. Who's yeah, but a couple people here were okay. Never mind.
They
Yes.
can raise their hand then.
Okay, if you're challenged here in the room, raise your hand. But who has read the latest version? So it's version 1, 2,
01.
01 of this draft.
3
Except
and
for the
Hank read it because
authors,
he sent
Monty.
comments.
Huh?
Hank
Yeah, Hank.
also, so at least 4 in the room.
So 4 in the room?
I'm still pressing yes, yes.
I was also able to click, so
Okay.
not trying to vote twice.
Well, we've had 5 people. Okay, we could do a check here. We're going to confirm on the mail list too.
Right.
So can we do another poll since we've had 5 people that have read the draft? Who would support the draft as an adopted? No, no authors. Okay. Do you support adoption of this draft into RATS? So next poll getting asked.
And we can confirm on the list for people
Well,
who haven't
we
read,
have to
right?
confirm on the list.
Yep.
Okay, because beyond this, Kathleen, we need to ask who's willing to work, who's willing to provide feedback, and all of that I'll ask on the mail list. So it looks like you're on a positive trend, but we'll confirm.
Great,
and then
thank you.
The next set of questions I will ask is who's willing to review, who's going to implement. I don't know if you need more authors. That
So you have a no. Do you want to ask why? If
I
they want
didn't
to
see
come?
the no.
There was one, though.
Okay.
I mean, it's not me, but
Thank you, Deb.
I didn't
Oh,
vote.
I'm going, no, there's 11 no's.
I
was like,
didn't,
no.
I
Okay.
didn't vote, so.
Hopefully you, yeah.
But so it's optional
the-
if you voted no and you want to come to the
Yeah.
mic and say why. then.
So for the person who doesn't believe it should be adopted, are you willing to come up and comment? Justin, you're in the queue, and so's Mohammed, but
So I didn't vote no, but I've got some opinions. I'm willing to. Are you the vote? No. Okay. So I just wanted to let that happen. Hi. So Justin Richer. I think that the concept of the document is sound. The document itself needs a lot of work, which is fine for something coming into a working group. It's going to need to be. It's going to need a lot of syntactical work in order to be aligned with JOT and all of that other stuff. Like it, and it's a lot of it's little syntactical stuff. Like your claim names are uppercase, and that will make the entire Jose community have an absolute fit. You know, little things like that.
We have your help.
What's
we have
that?
your help. We have your help. I'll buy you coffee and meet you at Sidekick Cafe at home.
Yeah.
okay, we need
Maybe.
to keep moving, but
Regardless, regardless, I think that there are some nuggets of good ideas that are worth communicating in there. I think that it's just got a long ways to go in order to make it clear what's being communicated and how. And I think that's evidenced by the questions that like Yaron and I brought up to the mic. We're like, where is this coming from? Where is it going?
Yep. And some of that was intentional because I wanted working group input. I wanted it to be consensus and open source too. So.
Okay.
Okay, we need to speed the process up because we're going to run out of
Go right
time. So Mohammed, please make it quick.
Yeah, just a quick question about, so I didn't vote, but I just want to know before I vote that what kind of trusted execution environments would you plan to target? That if you are targeting something like which is in use and would be useful, then definitely it's a valuable contribution.
Right, so those are the questions I'm going to post on the adoption call, because if nobody is interested in implementing it, then that would be a red flag. And implementation to me implies that you're implementing it to be used, but I can make that more clear, right? So, okay.
Thank you.
Next up, who's doing PKIX? Hannes? Okay.
I have two of them, Gratz PKIX evidence and PKIX evidence. Which one is it?
Which one is the latest submission?
It's not
We
telling
can't
me.
tell.
Click on it.
Click on it.
One is my work, and the other one is.
Confirmed. That one?
Go to the next one. That's the wrong one. Yeah. Okay, I keep it short.
Good.
So, Mike has spoken to this group before. He informed you about the design team that is happening in the LAMS working group, where several of us here in the room, Ned, Monty, and Hank, are working on defining attestation in a CSR, the certificate signing request, to help certification authorities to make a decision about the issuance of a certificate based on remote attestation evidence. And so that design team has been running for a while. It was created like official design team. You can, and Mike invited members from this group to also participate. So there's, like if you don't sign up to the LAMS mailing list, he shared the information on the RATS mailing list. So even if you want to join now, the design team is still ongoing. And that specific work on the CSI attestation is making good progress. So it has, working group last call has started. And so the focus shifted to the work on defining an attestation evidence format that is useful for HSMs, for hardware security modules. And they use AS1, and they are based in coding as a way to encode the evidence. Okay. And so what this work is about, and the document describes it, is the thing that you see in bold is we are essentially proposing an AS1 port of the RATS EAT claims. So that's what it is. And this document describes that. And it can also be used in, or reused this encoding in X509 certificates. We have also added a few additional claims that are related to key attestation, which are not found in the EAT document itself. So because those are obviously important for a CA to know how is the key that was generated and it is being asked to be placed into a certificate, how is that private key stored on the device? So you can include information like, is the key, the private key, exportable or not? So that's in there as well. Next slide. There's a little bit of history. So we didn't start completely from a clean slate. There was some work by JP on from Crypto4A, because they have been implementing this approach. So we have been reusing lots of it. So that's a good thing. I talked about the other one, the participation in the group. There are lots of people from with TPM experience, not just HSM experience, so classical HSM and CA companies, but also people with expertise in DCG and with TPMs. So I think that's an asset that we are using. Next slide. Yeah, I already revealed that we are talking about an AS1 and their encoding here. And I will skip most of those items. So it's basically, in long words, what I was just saying. Next slide. Yep. And here are some references. So we have, there's a Git repository. So in case you want to file issues, we've also explored the design space. In the previous presentation that Mike gave at the Brisbane IETF meeting, we had a different design. And now, with all the feedback we got and also with the implementation experience, we switched to what we have now. And I think we are quite happy. So, and before that, Mike has done another design. So we kind of explored the design space and settled on where we are now. And that's why we are sort of confident that this is the right direction to go. There's also a publication of the work we have been reusing from the Crypto4A. And the rest of the slides, which I won't go through in benefit of time, is providing you lots of details on the precise AS1 structure, which of course is important, but not for what I'm here today, namely asking for sort of officially blessing the work to do it in RATS. We think that RATS is the right group to do this work rather than LAMPS, despite its AS1 focus. Of course, there has to be some sort of at some point in time ask for review from the AS1 experts. But the expertise on the claims, and particularly since we are reusing many of the RATS claims, is actually here. And also with the key attestation claims, there may be some discussion we should have at some point in time whether we also want to backport the key attestation claims into the EAT specification or into an extension. And since I'm seeing two persons in the queue, I would like to jump over to that, if that's okay.
Yes. Yep, and I'm going to lock the queue.
Okay. Because we ran out of time?
Because but we'll allow these
Awesome.
two.
Yeah. Yaron. No, I'm not going through.
Yeah, he said
Those
he
are
wasn't
details for
gonna.
backup material. If someone doesn't want to open the document, they can have the shorthand version here. Yaron.
So of course, everybody loves ASN1. I was wondering why actually it's not, or why aren't we starting with ACME? And then if we were to start with ACME, then maybe this wouldn't be ASN1 at all.
Because it's not new work.
Yeah. So ACME is first and foremost a protocol, and this is an evidence attestation evidence format. So
You said it's a product?
protocol.
Oh, protocol.
Yeah.
I was like, what?
Yeah. So in a sense, like so the community who is interested in this work is not interested in ACME.
Okay, yeah, that's a good enough
It's
reason.
probably more subtle than that, but and I don't appreciate all the complexity there. And maybe someone will later do some. There's actually work on remote attestation for ACME, which is also another interesting effort, which is great. But yeah, there's also remote attestation for OAuth for what it's worth.
Yeah, but ACME is similar enough to what you're doing here that.
No, not at all. It's a protocol, but this is an evidence format. So you could stick this evidence format into ACME attestation, and you will be totally fine.
I understand that. It's which level you choose to put it in.
No. This is totally compatible with. It's like this is the evidence format, and ACME and CMP and ESD and who knows what is the transport protocol.
You're suggesting to carry the attestation in the
Right,
certificate.
it's a carrier for the attestation ACME rather than the attestation evidence format itself.
We use conveyance in the architecture.
Right. Well, I'm just trying to do that clarification. Okay, make it quick, please.
Hi, this is Henk at the mic. I heard a separate document on key attestation. Yes. I'm in.
But are you interested in this work that I'm presenting, not the one that doesn't?
I'm also interested in the key attestation, but there are also so many authors already on there. But the PKX attestation, but the key attestation should be a separate thing. Claims.
Okay.
So have you presented this to LAMPS? And what did they say?
We haven't presented this to LAMPS, but a LAMPS group will happen. And there I'm going to talk about the CSI attestation. I will also point out to this work. I'm actually not a big fan of like this forum shopping, different groups telling the same presentations. That's
No,
sort
but
of
there's
annoying.
overlap there too.
Yeah.
So,
No,
okay.
just pointed to this group.
So I think you're asking for adoption, I'm presuming?
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
think what I'd like to do is just confer with the LAMPS chairs, and
Oh.
then we can do a call.
Oh,
for adoption.
definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, he's the LAMPS chair. Actually, LAMPS
Oh,
chairs.
LAMPS
Say
chair.
something. Tim.
Yeah, actually, I'm one of the LAMPS co-chairs. I'm actually I don't know about the working group, but I think it's perfectly appropriate for this to be over here. The LAMPS and REPS working groups are working pretty closely on the attestation stuff. And this has more RATS components than it has LAMPS components. The LAMPS components are largely just PQuakes has done what it's done, and this is all the same. So I think this is better here.
Okay, in the interest of time, I can put the adoption on the mail list.
That would be great. Thank you.
Because we're over time now.
Thank you.
Who's next? Thomas?
Hello. Oh, sorry. Okay. Can I go?
Yep.
Right. So this document was briefly presented in Brisbane, and on that occasion, the chairs asked for feedback from the working group. And since then, we received reviews and comments from Jiri, from Lawrence, from Carl, which we have incorporated in the published version. And we think the document is in fact in much better shape now because of that, and we want to take this chance to present it again and ask for adoption. Next, please. So it defines an extensible measurements claim for describing target environments, that is, things that are measured by testing environments. And currently, COSWID is the only format that is supported, but COSWID is not a good fit for environments that do not have a file system onto which the measurements can be anchored, which is the case for early boot components, which are the things that we are interested in here. So next, please. I think, yes. So in PSA, we have defined our own measurement type, which we call the PSA software component, which is basically the measurement of the target environment and some associated minimalist metadata. It looks like this. It's a bit custom. So the PSA model has been deployed and tested extensively and does the job, and we're happy with it. But we think it's valuable, and this thing is a valuable thing and can be possibly reused outside if you want the PSA ecosystem. Except as it is at the moment, it's a bit too ARM specific to be taken as is, right? So the idea is that we want to refactor this to take into consideration what it gives us as a set of recommendations in terms of interop, neutrality, reuse, and plug it back into the EAT ecosystem. Next, please. Oh, well, yes, I've gone through this already. So next, please, again. First of all, we step back a meter or two to define the underlying data model, right? So we want to identify the object that is measured and optionally any versioning information associated with that. We also want to identify the measurement itself in terms of the digest value and the algorithm that is used to compute the value. And optionally, we want to add any external entities involved in authorizing the component installation onto the device. This is the signer semantics, right? The signer is an entity that digitally signs the measured component. For example, if you're doing UEFI secure boot or you're doing the ARM trusted boot board, the signer is the thing that is associated with, is basically authorizing the installation of the component. Right? So in some cases, there is one single thing in the simplest situations, but in more complex situations, you might have multiple parties that need to cooperate and indicate collaboratively that they are endorsing or approving the installation of a certain component. So next, please. So we have taken a pretty minimalist approach here, and we want to keep it that way. We don't want this to be extensible in a way. It's just a fixed set of attributes that are used. But if there's anything that is absolutely needed and you want to see it there, please shout now so that we consider adding it. For example, we were looking at SVNs that may be a reasonable and reasonably cheap addition to the set of to the data model that I described in the previous slide. Next, please. So here's sorry, that was the info model. This is the data model. This data model reuses EAT as much as possible. So you see the sort of version type there. You see the quorum digest to encode the thing. The signer type is any defined by the EAT profile. So this will be customizable. Also note that the signer's optionality is going to be defined by the profile. And all of this stuff, next please, needs to be plugged into the EAT measurement framework. And for that, you need two serializations, right? The JSON serialization, the CBOR serialization. And you need to be able to transport them natively. So CBOR in CBOR, JSON in JSON, but also through tunnels, so CBOR in JSON and JSON in CBOR. So this is basically the mechanics that does the magic from a CTTL perspective. Next, please. So you have, I think, these are the sockets. This is just mechanics. Doesn't matter. Next, please, again. Next. Next. Yeah, I'm done. In a sense that, okay, so we think this, in summary, we think this is a data item that covers a gap that that is not currently addressed by the measurement framework in EAT, especially for early boot measurements. It extends EAT and does that in the same way, I would say, reusing all the available type system and that we have from both EAT and Aquarium, and it's been battle tested based on field experience with PSA. So yeah, adopt. That's the question. And I would be very interested to get comments, especially from the editors, if Jiri or Lawrence or Carla are around, about this, since they also have commented profusely on this. Thanks. I'm done.
Hey, Tom, you have someone in the queue. Do you want to take the questions now?
Sure. I've finished with the presentation, so.
So AJ, you're in the queue?
Yes. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, AJ.
All right. Thanks. My mediocre laptop prevails today. Can you go back a few slides to the CTDL definition? This might be a minor nit, but I want to make sure I understand. I thought that's a newer feature with the import statements, but isn't import digest from RFC XSS's co-rim mean that the line with measurement should just be digest? Is it actually a named import? Am I misunderstanding that draft, or is that a typo?
There's no typo except the RFC YYY and RFC XXXX are just are placeholders for the RFC numbers of Quorum and EAT. But apart from that,
okay.
That is good syntax, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll have to re-review then. I'm surprised, but okay. I don't have a substantive comment beyond this. This looks good, and I have not read it, but I will review it sometime soon. Thank you.
And Thomas, there's some questions in the chat, so make sure you copy those down.
Okay, Monty, you're in the queue?
Yeah, Monty Wiseman, Beyond Identity. Just looking at this from a TCG perspective also, and a Linux IMA perspective, have you looked at this from, kind of compare and contrast? Does this accommodate IMA, for example, especially some of the new formats that IMA is coming up with, and as well as the event log format produced by the TCG TPM firmware? Have you looked at that? If not, I'll volunteer to basically make sure that this can at least accommodate those. Those are very common things that I think this would apply to. So
that's awesome.
I'll volunteer to look at that.
Thanks, Monty. That's awesome.
Yeah.
What happened?
Watch your language, please.
Okay, so he wants to do an adoption call. So can we run the polls again? Yep. Okay, so we're going to run another poll. So Thomas, what version of draft are you in now?
Ooh, that's a good question. I need to look.
Okay, so version 3. So who has read version 3 of the EAT measurement draft?
Yeah, it's 3.
What's that?
There's one hand.
So one hand up in the room. Gary, are you also responding in the poll? Yes. Okay. 4 yes, 4 no.
Vote once.
Okay, so 4 have read, 4 have not. 5 have not. What's that?
Some people aren't voting.
A lot of people are not voting. Apathy. Like not even expressing opinions.
Not even the no opinions.
Okay, you think 4 is enough?
You could put it to the list because then that'll give people 2 weeks and they can review it during that
So-
time period as well.
So Thomas, let's just put it to the mail list.
Okay. Works for me.
We have a lot of adoption. Okay, so we're actually back on time. CCA tokens. Who's presenting that? Okay.
Uploaded the deck, you should have it.
When
I got it. Okay.
I know we have open mic time, so I'll try to stick to that. So this is actually about the ARM CCA attestation token. And this is, you can see, this is a co-edited Simon and Thomas, but also me, Gary, and I'm now with MediaTek. I'm speaking as an ARM partner. Please continue on. Next slide. So I'll go back to the Confidential Compute Consortium's definition of confidential computing, protection of data in use by performing computation in preferably a hardware-based TE. So I think CC has gotten to be a relatively mature concept in the industry now, and it's concerned with what I consider a little bit of an expanded definition of protection of data at rest, in transit, and in use. Attestation takes on added importance in that because particularly when you see a lot of the applications of CC, such as, for instance, Secure AI, remote verification of the workloads that are running in a CC environment. They could be in terms of an inferencing engine or any other types of tasks take on a lot of importance in different environments, different applications. So ARM actually defined the confidential compute architecture 3 years ago as a reference architectural design for systems on chips with integrated TEs. You can go on next slide. This is a very kind of high-level diagram of mine to actually show how the relationship between the attesting environment and the target environment. So CCA starts primarily with the root of trust that provides what they call hardware-enforced services for securing the CCA environment. And workloads are run in the context of something that is called a realm, which is a execution environment for specific workloads that the CCA actually provides isolation for, and essentially a security guarantee. The security domain is generally referred to as realm world, and so realm world is actually separate from existing ARM defined security domains that maybe people in the room are familiar with. There's traditional user space, sometimes called a rich execution environment, and also what has been called secure space. If you've heard of trust zone, and there are two types of tokens, attestation tokens, or two types of attestations. I'll say tokens for now, but I'll refine this concept in the upcoming slides. So HES actually provides a platform token. So the platform is the underlying hardware and trusted computing base that is necessary to form the CCA security guarantee. There's also the realm management monitor, which operates outside of HES, but is responsible for ensuring isolation of different realms as they come up in the target environment. And so the HES forms a platform token. The RMM can retrieve that platform token, but also it forms a realm token, and that realm token is necessary to attest to the specific realm. Both tokens are defined in the E format. Can we move to the next slide, please? Okay, so there are two models that are defined in the current draft. There's a delegated model where which is basically the two token model. Now, what was the realm management monitor signing the realm attestation token with is with what's called a realm attestation key pair. And that's actually generated by the Hesper trust. And the RMM retrieves that key pair and signs the realm token. Now, so how does the verifier obtain trust in that realm attestation key pair? Well, the HES forms a platform token, if you recall. That platform token uses as challenge data the hash of the realm attestation key pair public key. Can I answer the question?
Yeah, it's up
Yeah,
to you.
it's up to you.
Please.
Okay,
Please,
so that's on the last slide. So
Yeah, go ahead.
somehow ARM has a very strong affiliation with the word token, and I don't like that because in RATS we have the evidence. So I would like it to be changed to evidence. So this token word is really confusing. Like what does it really represent in terms of RATS?
Fair.
So it would be nice to have it platform evidence instead of platform token, and wherever you use, just replace it with the evidence.
Okay. Okay, thanks, Osama. So me and Thomas and Sam will take that in for future versions of the draft. Okay, could we go back to the next one?
I'm on 4. You want to go to 5?
Yeah, sorry, 4, yes. Yeah, so on the direct model, this is so the RMM in this case creates a claim set and hashes it, and the hash is provided to the has brought and as the challenge data. And then the platform attestation key pair is the only signing key pair. So this is a little similar to the detached bundle, if you're familiar with the EAT spec, but it's a little bit more of a specific definition. And so there are advantages and disadvantages of each model. The direct model always ensures that there's only one signing key pair, and it's within the highest assurance environment in a CCA implementation. But the delegated model allows for the attestation to originate from realm world and doesn't require interaction with the has every time a realm comes up or goes down. Okay, let's move on. Slide 5, please. So the attestation messaging takes advantage of the CMW format, which is being standardized in RATS. The example shown there is the delegated token approach, where 2 tokens are sent as a collection. The direct model actually will actually send also in a CMW wrapper, but it'll be a realm claim set along with the platform token. We go to the next slide. So the next steps, we'll continue to refine the contribution and register new claims as defined in the current draft. With the CWT claims registry, there's already IENA considerations in the document. We also like RATS working group members to provide input for future versions of the draft, and we've already gotten some today. And we're also looking for any case studies and a gap analysis, not just related to CCA, but to CC in general, that it's maybe not being considered with the attestation evidence as defined in this in the current draft, and any additional claims that participants think would actually be useful for verifiers and relying parties. And that's it.
You have the people on the queue.
Okay. Thanks.
Hi, this is Hank. So now when I summarize this, you have the CCA endorsement and the CCA evidence, and you are going to use quorum, and there is a verifier behavior, and you want to map this output to the R4Z. So I think that's the landscape you're painting here with all these documents.
That is correct.
Yeah, so where does the verifier behavior go? Into this ID or where? Because
So
we're talking about the theory of operations of verifiers.
So you're talking about the functional?
Yeah.
I believe I believe that is better covered in the documents that ARM has produced. And also there is a very excellent paper that was an IEEE Access that was published at the end of last year that that covers verifier behavior. But if you think a functional model belongs in this document, somewhat like an architectural model, that's something I think we can consider. Simon is on the call too, or sorry, Thomas is on the call too. Thomas, did you understand the question and do you have any responses to that?
Yes, so in terms of R4C, we are going to define the trustworthiness claims mappings within the attestation, the evidence document, so this one. For the quorum parts, there's going to be, well, there is a parallel document, a separate document which defines the quorum profile for CCA. And that's how we think we are going to deal with that.
So CCA endorsement will be
yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Because you're also talking about a little bit about that in the currently named token document, so it could move there. That sounds appropriate. Thank you.
Yeah, but I think the CCA end-to-end architecture is compliant with 9.3.3.4. And if you disagree, please let us know. I don't think a new document necessarily needs to be defined from that perspective.
Yogesh?
Yeah. So a couple of points I want to add here clearly, as I think Thomas covered already. There is already a RATS CCA endorsement document, which I am going to share in the chat window in about a minute, I think. And the second aspect, which is not covered in the slide, is we have full open source implementation of a CCS scheme in open source project Verizon, where the endorsement and the evidence is handled and verification done using the architecture just presented by Giri. Yeah, that's all I wanted to kind of highlight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just to add that I have put it in the chat, the work that you just mentioned for that, I'm the co-author of that. Simon and Shale and Thomas Fusati are also in that work. So in that we have the verifier functionality all mentioned. It's in IEEE access. And I really like this work. So I also encourage other vendors to also do such kind of effort to have this standardized.
Hi, Peter Chinchilio from Huawei. Actually, this is not about the CCA draft. I want to make, if it's okay, if there's no more comments and questions about the CCA draft.
Yeah, I think you want to go to open mic, then I'll.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Well, yeah.
I guess,
Are we done with your
done?
draft then?
Yeah, did you want to close the queue? I think we can do that.
Well, I closed the
close,
queue
but
thinking
Peter's
Peter
in it.
was going to ask you on your draft.
It's no, it's just a open mic.
Okay.
I think it's fine. He's
All
already.
right. So
All right, thank you.
thanks, Gary.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Peter.
All right, thanks. So I'm trying to make this brief. This is essentially an advertisement. So we are proposing a new initiative that's building on top of RATS. So right now it's going to have a BOF in this Thursday morning. So basically, scenarios of telecom networks, some routers may have utilized the, remote attestation, and some are not. So right now we want to allow these operators to choose, maybe remote attested routers over non-remote attested routers. So we have integrity check proofs, and we have dependable forwarding, to make sure that they can execute forwarding dependably and avoid deviation or leakage of data. So now we can allow use cases like security enhanced connectivity. So the reason maybe why RAS people could care is that number one is that the RAS is the base technology, that because we kind of cherry pick those RAS remote attested devices out of none. That's number one. That's the guarantee of the integrity to dependable hop-by-hop forwarding. And that number two is that this could potentially promote the deployment of RATs, more in the telecom, routers and devices. Yeah, so the time is Thursday morning, the Nazar BOF, Network Attestation for Secure Routing, and thank you.
Yeah, so just to close on that, since there was a question, and thank you, Peter, because I was going to do the announcement and the closing. So the BOF is relevant to RATS, as Peter is mentioning. The session is this Thursday from 9:30 to 11:30, and it will be held in Regency EF for those who are interested. Regency EF on the third floor. It's on the schedule. It's, no. It is a non-forming working group BOF.
It's on the regular agenda for the conference.
So if you look at the regular agenda, it's on Thursday, Thursday session 1. Thanks, Deb. Okay, with that, we're out of time. So I don't have a summary, but there's quite a few drafts to be adopted and working group last calls.
And thank you to the minute takers. I watched and did a great job. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and thank you for those who helped augment. So with that, we will conclude. Thank you, everyone. We'll continue discussions on the mail list. So just one reminder to